Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Marion County Hardball. We're going to be talking with Michael Scott Burnette, who's a candidate for Marion County Sheriff's Office. And before we get started, I would like to invite all the other candidates for sheriff to come on Marion County Hardball and talk with us. You're all welcome, regardless of party affiliation or lack of party affiliation. We also want to have a roundtable for our sheriff candidates in the very near future. So please contact us and come on. And of course, I want to mention, if you enjoy Marion County Hardball, please go to the top of Marion County Messenger's page and click on our link and buy us a cup of coffee. And I say us, it's buy me a cup of coffee. Rurik is uncompensated and does this purely because he enjoys doing it. So please, if you're a sheriff or candidate for sheriff, please contact us. We'll get you on here. Rurik, Michael, I'm going to let y'all take off with it.
Michael, as I always open, I appreciate you running.
Thanks, bro.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I know a lot of stuff I'm hearing you say are new ideas, and I think we need new ideas. But before we dive into the updates on your campaign and what you're up to, for those that don't know who you are, if you can give a quick synopsis of Michael Burnette and what you're up to.
Okay, my name is Michael Scott Burnette, and I go by Scott. I have to do my full name because of legalities, but I go by Scott. I'm running for sheriff for Marion County, as you all stated. My background is 20 years in special forces and psychological operations, and 20 years as a police officer. I've updated my qualifications and bio on my Facebook page. I'm not saying that for clickbait. It's all out there. An individual pointed out that it wasn't, and it's something I neglected because I don't do Facebook. My wife actually helped make the page. So I put it up there last night, I think it was. So please go there and you'll see my qualifications. But
okay,
that's what
it'll have your education as well, because I know
yes.
you've been through a number of schools. Tell us about the campaign. How's everything rolling?
I think it's going well, honestly. I've had people come up to me and talk to me and ask me questions or send me DMs. They call DMs on Facebook. And people have pointed things out. They've given me their opinions. They've asked for my ideas, and I love the interaction. I've had negative comments as well, and that's great. It's okay. It's expected. But in general, I think it's great.
Okay.
The one thing I do find sad, in a sense, is the number of people that have come to me and have basically said that they would vote for me, or they're going to vote for me, but they can't say it publicly. And they said that we would want a sign and put it on our yard, but we can't put one out. And I've never been in a place like that before.
And you understand it's fear.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's fun. I'm doing this because literally in 22, a year after I moved here, I was asked to speak for Memorial Day in Jasper. And I spoke out there in front of the square by the memorials there. And it was great, and it was such an honor. But I didn't talk about and that's typical me. I didn't talk about the usual memorial things about, our service members dying for our country, etc. I talked about fear, right? And how we shouldn't be fearful, and how not to be fearful, and why are we fearful? And I talked about how the veterans died for this country, and they didn't die if you didn't live in fear. And I firmly believe in that. And then in fact, no, I'm not tooting my own horns here. You're just going to get to know me if you do by looking and seeing these things. But I just did a speech at the Princess Theater,
mm-hmm.
and the speech was about cowardice. and how we're raising a generation of cowards. We're not purposely doing it at all, but we don't realize we are. And the recruiters, we're having a hard time getting recruits for all the services. Coast Guard, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army, okay? People are so afraid to stand up to confrontation that they actually start a confrontation to kind of repel people away from them.
Well, I think it's a lot easier now. You can be behind a keyboard and you can say things that you would never say to someone to their face, right? You'd never say some of the things. And yeah, it's an interesting thought that we have to be careful that our war fighters, we don't have many right now.
Well, that goes along with, like when I was a police officer, I was an FTO.
What is an FTO?
Oh, sorry, field training officer. So
okay.
After you graduate from the academy, you're still a student, and so you ride with an experienced police officer, okay, and they do OJT, on the job training, and they evaluate you and everything. So it was my job to teach them more than just what the academy did, okay? And all of my students, I can't even remember how many I've had, but none of them had been in fights before. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you need to be in a fight, but what I'm saying is you have to know how to end a confrontation quickly and try to do it without hurting the other person, okay? And in order to do that, you have to know what it feels like to get hit. I mean, the actual last call I had before I retired, myself and this female officer who just happened to be a second lieutenant in the reserves also, we went to a house because this individual was in his 20s. He was beating on his mom badly. She was an elderly woman, okay? And he was tweaking out on methamphetamines. And as soon as we got there, he took off running and he went over a fence, and we chased him for about 1.5 miles at full sprint, okay? And he ended up in a park, and we ended up finally catching up to him, and because we had this equipment on, but we were still staying with him. We took him down, and then other officers came in, and he was able to get me right here. And I look down, and I see this. I get a black eye. I haven't had a black eye since high school, I think it was, But the point is, you have to understand what that's like in order to confront that. And so what I told my students is, I love you, brother, but I'm going to get you in a fight. Okay? Because you have to understand not to be afraid of that confrontation.
Well, no whooping on me right now, okay?
But
I'm sure there's a lot out there like me get whooped.
My students would back off of things. And like we had pulled a woman over, and I had my student with me, and I'm towards she opened the door for him. He's in the doorway, okay? And I'm right over here, and I'm trying to observe, and I'm trying to stay out of it because he's in the later phases, so I'm not supposed to do anything, right? And she's getting hostile. He has every right, and I'm not going to go into the details, but he has every right to pull her out of that car now, okay, and arrest her. And she's getting hostile. He's not doing it. And I can see that she's starting to do these glances, and she's going to want to fight, and she's going to want it. She's giving all these telltale signs. And he's like frozen. And this is one of the guys that's never been in a fight. And all of a sudden, she jumps up, and like a cat, she bounds up over this door, and I just grab her, and I slam her down on the hood, I roll her over, and I handcuff her. And I look at my student, and he's just like, I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Your inaction is a direct result of your fear that you might get into a fight.
Well, I think where we were going is how would you, as far as the community is concerned, why do you think that a lot of the residents here will say, hey, Scott, anyone looking? I'll support you. but I don't want anyone to know. That type of fear doesn't, not just from the overall public, but also being retaliated against. Possibly, you're going to be worried when you have a police officer behind you that they're going to purposely give you a ticket because you're on the wrong side of the political spectrum. You being sheriff, I guess one of the cures to that is that police officers in general shouldn't be in politics. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. I mean, I said it, I think it was here on the last Hardball, but right outside Steve Arena's restaurant is a sign from 1927, Christmas shootout. Mm-hmm. That is an extreme example of what happens when police, sheriff specifically, gets political.
Well, that's a big problem, and I guess under your tutelage or under your leadership, if you become sheriff, what would be some of the things you would try to do to make it so the public knows that, hey, it's your right to redress your government? If you have something that you want to say, it's your right, that you have freedom of speech. What would you do to make the public feel confident that as long as you're not breaking the law, you'll have all those things? And what I hear from you previously, because I've asked you of the 5 elements, I mean, I realize that you were quite astute. Freedom of speech. Give us an idea what it means to you.
I got a great example that just happened recently, and I'm sure you're aware of it, of this lawsuit that was settled, right? So,
the Mr. Morgan's lawsuit that
right.
For $85,000, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 84. The article was sent to me, so I didn't even know about it until the article was sent. But what's interesting is I did a video, my very first video for Facebook, and I addressed specifically the reason why I was running, because I was hesitant to say why, but I talked about the good old boy system, and I had to get validation other than just rumor that it existed. And one of the validation check marks for me was I saw a YouTube video that was sent to me of Mr. Morgan. He's in a county commission meeting, and he stood up to speak about something, but it was during the public speaking time frame, whatever you call it.
Public comments. Yeah.
Public comments. And immediately, some female, I don't know who, started shutting him down. They said he didn't want, they don't care.
She was the chairman of the commission.
Right, yes. I just know who it is. And telling him to go away. They don't want to hear it. And he's not being belligerent. He's not being violent. He's saying, no, you're going to hear me, something like that, And he kept insisting he's going to talk, and he's got his time. And they kept wanting to shut him down. Well, after, I don't know, several minutes, this councilwoman and maybe someone else, if I don't remember correctly, told the sheriff to remove him. And the sheriff stands up and says, okay, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave, and escorts him out. And I'm like, you can't do that. For a myriad of reasons, but most importantly, you just violated his constitutional rights. Okay? So that right there was like, okay, either the sheriff doesn't know what he's doing, okay, or he's the teeth for the city council, okay. And what that's telling me is there is an element that needs to change, and that comes with experience and training, knowledge, okay. And let's just say it goes awry. Let's say Mr. Morgan actually started getting violent or like hostile.
Different story.
That sheriff, because it was in the city of Jasper, that sheriff should be calling 911, okay, and police officers who are on duty in the proper uniform with the proper equipment, because all he had was civilian clothing, shows up and deals with Mr. Morgan, and maybe they have to handcuff him and arrest him and take him to jail. Because by the sheriff interfering with that, A, he's not wearing the proper equipment. How is he going to handcuff the guy? I didn't see handcuffs on him or any kind of case for
Meaning the
handcuffs.
sheriff didn't have handcuffs, yeah.
Is the sheriff going to get in a fight? There's a liability issue there. If he gets injured, now he's on workman's comp. You know, there's a whole myriad of issues with how that was handled.
Well, not only that, I don't think the chairman of the commission would order the sheriff or could order the sheriff to arrest.
No. And that was the other thing, that the lack of possible, no, I don't know the sheriff, so I don't know what he's thinking, but it could be he just didn't understand his role in that sense.
So we have an excellent question here from Tony Mangiamelli. Are you willing to support a program to help the people of Marion County with drug rehabilitation? Meaning to help them not only stay off the drugs, but to help them change the whole way of dealing with life.
Oh, absolutely. So there are a myriad of programs out there that exist. There's an education system that you can implement into the jail. There is like my county, my city, what they did is if an individual was arrested on a drug charge, and it's not like a whole bunch of drug charges in the past, that person would get an option to go to drug court. And at drug court, they would have to abide by certain conditions. One of them was going to like Alcohol Anonymous or Drug Anonymous or something like that, and then they would have to go through an education system. And if they violated any of those things, then they would go to jail. So there are a lot of programs that could definitely be implemented. What exactly is in this area, I don't know at the moment, but there is absolutely a need to educate the people, because education also brings awareness to help get them away from their peer group that puts them back into the same vicious cycle as well.
Is that something that the sheriff, though, in reality, is not your mission to enforce the law?
Yes.
And drug rehab, I think it's something we absolutely have to focus on so that we don't have repeat offending. But is that really the job of the sheriff's department?
In the sense of the jail, yeah, absolutely.
From the sense of the jail?
Of the jail, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But as a sheriff, if the sheriff backs programs such as drug rehabilitation programs, Alcohol Anonymous, Drug Anonymous, and other ones out there, that helps bolster the program and the awareness as well.
Do you think it's real important for every deputy, every officer, to know what the separation of powers is?
Absolutely, and that's where training comes in to play. And so transitioning from the military into the police, okay, and especially I was in the 1%, okay, so our training was like way up there, right? So I would go to the police and we'd have to go to these classes, and I would just be rolling my eyes like, why am I learning this again? Why am I here? Just immature thoughts, okay? But the classes were about constitutional law, okay? What kind of officer can and can't do, right? Like, let's just say this beautiful home. Let's say you have teenagers, and your teenagers are, they're 16, 17, and you decide you're going to go away for the night, okay? And you're leaving your kids here, and they decide they're going to have a party.
What?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that party there's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 kids in this household. And you can see them drinking, right? And it's noisy, and you get noise complaints. And so the police show up, okay? Well, in Washington State, I can't do anything about that unless I'm invited in, okay? So we would be there, and you just want to just go in that house, okay, and break it up and do whatever. You can't. Now, I can write a warrant because I see underage kids drinking alcohol. I see the alcohol, and because of my observation, I write a warrant. But there ain't a judge on the planet that I'm going to wake up, because I work graveyards, in the middle of the night who's going to sign a warrant for a bunch of kids drinking. So we had to come up with other ways to get the party to break up.
Well, probable cause wouldn't be enough?
No, not in Washington State for misdemeanor crime. No. So The point being is the officer who comes in that door uninvited just violated the law, just violated the Constitution by a warrantless search and seizure. Classes teach that, right? And it can differ from state to state. Like the Ninth Circuit Court out there is very, very, very lenient. Like one of the most lenient in the whole country, right? But education is what keeps the officer out of liability, keeps the department out of liability, and keeps the community safe. So you ask the question, how would I get the confidence of the community? Mm-hmm. Okay? Well, first of all, what I would do is I would have at least a monthly town hall. Absolutely love that idea. And
Can we pause here for a few questions
Yes,
and then
sir.
come back
I'm sorry.
to the town hall? First of all, Melissa Pickett wanted me to repeat your name. This is Michael Scott Burnette, and he's running for Marion County Sheriff. Teresa Gillen said, thank you. We had GED classes in the jail, chaplain services, and recovery classes that were all stopped a few years ago under the current administration.
Really?
I have
Okay.
I have no way to verify that. This is what she's saying. I have no reason to doubt her.
Okay, yeah.
Melissa Pickett said, yes, the sheriff can help greatly. Franklin County has a wonderful drug rehab program in their jail. Well, she didn't add in their jail. I added that. They have a wonderful drug rehab program. Okay.
To add to that, actually, that's a fantastic point, is there is a sheriff's association. And there is a law enforcement, I can't remember the name of, basically chiefs of police and sheriffs. They get together on an annual basis in different parts of the country, and they have speakers and those and displays of new technology and everything. Okay, yeah. And I would definitely get there all the time. And the reason why is sharing new ideas. Because if you sit in a bubble, eventually that air in that bubble is just going to give out and you're just going to suffocate. You're never going to expand. Get yourself out there and learn what the new technologies are. Learn what the new methodologies are. Learn what the new programs are. And that's what I would do on a yearly basis, is get out and start talking. Like one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm trying to get a hold of them now, but I'm going to contact the Hamilton County Sheriff. Okay? See what's working for them, what's not working for them, lessons learned. Polk County in Florida. He's given me his business card. Well, not him, but one of his associates. Get in this office, I'll be talking to him. Because he has one of the most successful sheriff's departments in the country. I don't remember the guy's name, but out of Arizona. Same thing. Get out, start talking to people, start talking to the surrounding counties, start talking to the police chiefs in the surrounding cities, and work together to solve a lot of different problems.
See what works.
Yeah.
See what doesn't work.
Best practices.
Yep.
What would your plans be to protect victims of domestic assault and violence?
Okay, so that's an excellent one. That would depend, and that's what, so I'm not post-qualified or certified, but I've been waived, as I showed the email on my website. Along with it, when I get elected, I will go to 2-week lateral course, just like someone's a police officer in a different state. When they move here, they get hired. They have to go to a lateral academy and learn Tennessee specific laws. Okay, and that's exactly what I do. And the reason why I bring that up is there are federal laws that protect domestic violence victims, and there are state laws as well. Okay, so I would have to learn. I would seriously doubt they're different. Okay, but I would have to learn the nuances, so to speak, of Tennessee law. But as far as protecting domestic violence victims, okay, so there's a line that you have to follow legally, okay? Let's say officers get called to your lovely home because they hear a bad argument going on. And they come in, they interview, but they just know that if they leave, it can get really, really bad. Okay, just by demeanor and all these, maybe some words, but there's nothing that they can actually act on at the moment. but they just know in their guts because they're like experienced officers who just know, you just know after a time being. But there's nothing they can do. So they have to leave. Okay? They can't remove an individual just on a feel kind of thing. Okay, well maybe Tennessee law states something that where some little nuance happens, it gives a little bit more flexibility than Washington State does. Okay, like a really heated argument, maybe Tennessee law goes, hey, we suggest you get a hotel room, so maybe here's a hotel voucher to separate them for the night. You know, those kind of things. I don't know that specifically, but to protect violence victims, there's homes, I'm sure, there's shelters, I'm sure. The specifics, I don't know for this state, yeah.
On the scene of an accident where police and EMS are dispatched, who has authority on the scene? What is the role of the police? What is the role of fire? What is the role of EMS? Should fire be dispatched to all accidents?
Okay. That is a,
The guy's name is Freddie Barnhill.
Okay, so that is a very multi-answered question. So everything is dependent on variables.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and everything is dependent on agreements between departments as well, or agencies. Let's just use a basic fender bender, okay, where there's no injury. Okay, first of all, fire is going to get dispatched. Maybe not EMS, but fire will get dispatched because it's their job to evaluate if ambulance is needed. Sometimes it's reversed, where if there's no obvious need for, based on the 911 caller, there's no need for fire, then an ambulance will show up to make a determination, because they have to, well, in Washington State, they had to interview the people in the accident, make sure that they weren't injured, and then if they were injured but they didn't want to be ambulanced, they would have to sign a waiver, okay? Fire always showed up, but also we were told by firemen that they have to, because it kind of helps justify their budget as well, okay? And they don't particularly like being called out in the middle of the night all the time for non-fires, and they're called out all the time. I felt bad for them. As far as police is concerned, it depends on where it's at. If there's an accident right here on the interchange, okay, on the overpass here, that's highway patrol, but highway patrol may not be available. So maybe there's an agreement where Kimball takes it, or if county shows up, we'll just say, hey, we got this, Kimball, don't worry about it. You know, there's this mutual aid thing going on. Now I will say though, if there is heartache between heads of state, so to speak, between chiefs, between sheriff and a chief, then that things get ugly for the men and women who work for those departments. There was a time where our sheriff and my police chief just did not get along anymore. Honestly, my police chief was a work. Because of that, because of his inability to actually work with other people, and the sheriff is like, my deputies aren't doing anything anymore. And it made our lives a living nightmare.
Guys, I'm just getting avalanched with questions here.
Sweet.
Madeline Claire wanted to know if you were elected sheriff and discovered a case of professional misconduct. What steps would you take to address it transparently and ensure accountability, considering the community's trust has been impacted?
That's a great question.
Oh, I love that question.
Great question.
Thank you. I was dying for this question because I don't ever want to bring up myself. If I was in a perfect world and I get elected and I have the ability to do this, I want to bring an IA chief with me.
Yeah.
Okay? I want him completely removed from this department, from this county, because I need a complete and total unbiased investigation.
That's internal affairs.
And IA, internal affairs.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because the worst thing that can happen to any law enforcement department is to have that officer do something to lose the trust of the community. And I'll use a great example, most recent example within the last several years. And granted, it was taken too far, but you have two officers making an arrest on a black man. in a city, okay? For domestic violence crime, this black man, doesn't matter on drugs or not, he's not being cooperative, okay? They get him into a car, he's still not being cooperative, okay? He's struggling, he's not settling down, etc. They take him out and they hold him down, and I'm not going to get into it, but he ends up dying, okay? That turns into this massive nationwide destruction of police. Okay? Defund the police, screw the police, you're racist, my thin blue line flag became racist, all of a sudden my American flag became racist, you know, and yet my department had no racism in there, but all of a sudden we became systemic racist. My whole department. The point I'm making is, those two officers, right when all that happened, are removed, taken off duty, put on leave, investigated. It's completely transparent the entire time, and the results, when they're done, are said and done. Okay? That is an extreme case of what happens when the public loses trust of the department when an officer does misconduct.
Now, how would the internal affair, you said you'd bring an internal affair person with you? Or?
Yes, I would like to, yes. Once
Okay.
I get in, hire internal affairs person, someone who's experienced in that in that realm, okay, so that we have allegations of misconduct, and those allegations are then investigated.
And I don't believe, and maybe some of the audience that are law enforcement, I've not heard of us having an internal
No, you
affair.
don't.
It's the sheriff.
Right.
Is the internal.
You're right. And
so
the problem with that is when the sheriff is the one, first of all, the sheriff has to be freed up to do the overarching duties of sheriff. He can't be in the micromanagement realm. Okay? So if he is putting his resources into, and some allegations, I mean, I've heard, all I can say is, I've heard that there's been a death or two in the jail. Okay? I don't know anything about it. I'm just using an example. There's a death in the jail. That sheriff cannot be solely focused on an investigation as to why that death occurred. And it can't be the detectives in the department, because I would think that the detectives are more involved with other criminal cases. So you need a department that's completely separated from the sheriff, so to speak, independently operating, but reports to the sheriff. But I would also like to have an undersheriff, not this chief detective title, but an undersheriff, because title has everything. Okay? Titles explain things. Okay? I would like to have an undersheriff. He's the one the IA falls under him, and the jail for all administrative things. Okay?
So the internal affair individual would be specifically titled as internal affair director, what have you.
Yes.
And they're normally law enforcement.
IA chief. He's absolutely at law enforcement. Prior law enforcement, retired law enforcement, brought back to duty, senior guy.
Okay, so now we've not heard that. So this is something this is something that's great that we're hearing here. So when we get some of the other sheriff candidates to come on, that would be a great conversation for us to have, because we certainly don't want to have an issue happen like what you described, where we lose the confidence of the community and we don't have a system set up to make sure that, hey, if something that the officer did wrong, it needs to be transparent and the public needs to know that it's been corrected.
Right.
So that's give us some more things. Oh, is there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I got a plethora of questions here. Timothy Cash. This isn't really a question. It's the Tennessee law on domestic is shall arrest law. Once the primary aggressor has been determined, the officer shall arrest.
Yep.
And TCA shall means we must arrest.
Right.
I take domestics very seriously. It's one of our most common calls.
That's common everywhere. Yeah, that was my That was absolutely my number one call every night.
Would you
At various
explain that
levels.
for us novice out here real quick?
So what he's referring to is if certain elements exist, then there is the federal law removes the officer's ability to make a choice. Okay? Not only does it exonerate the officer from future liability in the department, but what it does is it protects the victim by removing the suspect from the area for a night or two or whatever how the jail works things here, and bail and everything else like that. Okay? So let's say that there's a visible injury. Okay, there is no and, ifs, or buts. You get your stories, you get your witnesses. The person who caused the injury is out. They're gone. They're gone for that night. They're arrested. There's no and, ifs, or buts about it. Okay? The gray areas, there can be gray areas. Like I had a visible injury on this female. She had the injury of an iron, an iron right here. And after doing the interview, the husband, it was obvious that the husband has been asleep for like ever, right? He had bad pressing, sheet pressing. And the way the injury was, I started pressing her more, and it was self-inflicted. They were getting a divorce, and she was trying to make him go to jail and for her court case and everything. So he did not go to jail, okay? She did for false reporting. And it came out in court. She didn't even go to court. She settled because she did. She
knew she was wrong.
Yeah, she admitted to me that she was lying and everything else like that.
Mr. Cash, that's a great question because I'd not heard it.
That was good input.
Yeah, that was very.
I want to thank you, Mr. Cash, and I'm assuming you're an officer. Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to modernize the department? If so, what are your plans?
Absolutely. And I'm so excited about this. I'm like seriously excited about this. I found out that there's a new vehicle. I heard that county may have one or two, where if you get too close to it, it starts bells and whistles and tells someone to go away. That's great. But there's training that needs to go with that. And later this week, I'm going to do a video about training specifically on how just officer-specific things that need to occur as well. But yes, I absolutely want to work on, and I don't know what my parameters are either, and that's why I was talking to this mayor candidate. Knowing what the budget is, etc. What I want to do is I want to modernize equipment, okay? And if you read my bio, one of the things I did for my department was, because I came from where stealth is very important, right? As a Green Beret working at night and everything. I brought in nylon gear. Like we had to wear leather gear. And leather looks good, but leather is reflective at night and leather squeaks. So I refused, and fortunately my department was smaller and they were acceptant for me to wear nylon gear. And pretty much everyone started wearing nylon after a while. The 2-ear radio system, or the 2-wire radio system, I brought that idea with me because the regular police radio is right here, or maybe now the body cam, but it's out here. And when dispatch talks to you, the suspect or subject can hear it. And so as an operator, we had in-ear radios because especially at night, sound travels. I can't have somebody, if I'm sneaking up, somebody hearing my conversations, so it's in my ear, and then a lapel mic. Okay, and that way when dispatch lets me know that that person I'm talking to has warrants, that person that is not aware of what dispatch is telling me. So modernizing equipment, vehicles. I don't know what kind of budget I'm going to have, but that's going to be one of my top priorities. Okay, I've heard that most of these vehicles are civilian cars with sheriff stickers on them, and then they put a brush guard on it. All right, there is problems with that. There's liability with that. I've heard that a lot of these vehicles have over 100,000 miles. That's a serious problem. I heard that from a mechanic that they were dropping a new engine into this one unit, and this unit had over 120,000 miles on it. Okay, that engine costs more than that car does. Okay, so there's problems that exist, and maybe it's just not knowing what the ramifications are. But if you get into a chase and you hit another civilian car with a civilian car, a non-rated car, there is a potential of liability there. And I understand that this department, this city, or this county, they haven't had, I've heard, I don't know positive, but I've heard that there hasn't been many lawsuits against the police forces, okay?
Against the sheriff's office?
Sheriffs and police forces.
But there's not been a lot of lawsuits?
A lot of suits, yeah, for actions conducted. Have you? I've heard there hasn't been that many at all in the history of here.
Well, let me ask you, let me give you a scenario.
Yeah.
So if you're transporting your people that have been arrested to another county, for instance, how are you going to make sure that type of movement, one, are you going to have a body camera, or is there going to be something in the car so that we can have at least, make sure that there's no issues happening from point A to point B,
right? So
that the county can't be in trouble if the bad guy in the back says, "Hey, the driver hit me" or whatever.
Right.
So is that pretty standard to have that type?
Well, there's new technology. So when I first got on, you had the Crown Vic, so there wasn't a lot of modern technology. Mm-hmm. There weren't in-dash cameras and things, and a lot of it would have to be word of mouth, officer versus arrestee kind of thing. Okay. So what we used to do is, if the arrestee starts, say, "I want to kill your family," or "Hey, you're raping," or whatever they were doing, whatever they're doing in the cage, we would hit a button on our radio and it would silence all other things out there, and dispatch is hearing everything that's going on. Okay, the problem with that was it cuts out all the communications everywhere else. So we'd have to go to a different channel eventually if it continues. And we let the suspect or arrestee know that, hey, you're being recorded right now, that kind of thing. Now, today, there's cameras that can go into the cage of your arrestee, cameras that are dash cams for the patrol officer. Everyone has body cams now, okay, so those are on, so you have different ways to protect the officer and the department for those kind of things.
And one thing that it seems like, and again, my bailiwick is not law enforcement,
Understood.
And I try to stay out of trouble myself. But it's always based on money.
Yeah.
So if you have a small budget, I guess you're going to have to prioritize what you want to modernize.
Absolutely.
Because it seems like we're losing officers to Hamilton County.
Yep.
So how are you going to address
retention? Talking about retention. There's also a retention issue from these towns to county. And I've heard about how the public, let's use South Pittsburgh, the public is tired of paying for the new officer, and they go to the academy, and then shortly thereafter they move. Well, that's going to stop, because I'm not going to allow the laterals from these towns, because it's not fair to the citizens of each town. It's just, you just don't do that. Just no. All right. As far as retention is concerned, as far as prioritization is concerned, there's the needs and the wants. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I can guess at all of them, right? But once I'm in there, you have to actually look at what are exactly the wants and what are exactly the needs, okay?
The wounds.
And then I would just like, let's talk about, as a special forces team leader, okay? I'm the captain, and I have 11 NCOs with me, non-commissioned officers, and they're all senior guys. They're sergeants, staff sergeants, sergeant first class, and master sergeants, okay? So these are guys older than me, okay? But very senior people on this team, right? They all understand what my authority is, okay? But I'm only as good as the people I'm surrounded with,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So I take input from all of my men, we come up with a plan, and if there's a certain area that one individual is as a better expert at it than I am, then you default to that person, okay? And then we make this decision together as a whole. That's the difference between regular Army and special operations. That is what I bring with me.
Where your
so
leadership
to
skills,
answer your question, the wants and the needs I would actually talk to all the personnel in the department. We would get together and we would discuss, what are your needs? What are your wants? Let's start putting a list together.
What
Okay.
about protecting SA victim or a domestic violence victim? What's your protection plan? I think it should be more than an order of protection or an ankle monitor.
Oh, well, see, that's not up to the sheriff. You're referring to after an arrest and after a court proceeding is done, okay? The courts determine what the next steps are. We're just the enforcement of that. So if an arrestee gets convicted of a non-felony crime, so in other words, they're out on bail, or no, they're out after their sentencing, okay, such like we called it assault 4, which is a lower form of assault in Washington State. The courts determine what's going to happen with this individual, what they can and can't do, and it's put into a no contact order, okay? Now, that person can't violate that no contact order. In other words, they can't email them, they can't use any form of communications between themselves and the significant other that they had an issue with, okay? If they do, then that significant other, it's incumbent upon them to call the police and report it. They come out, investigate it, and they rearrest this person, okay? If a police, I can't tell you the number of times I'm driving in my patrol car and I'm running plates as I go by, which is another thing that we need to get. We need to get the MDCs in the cars so that the officers have the latitude to run plates in the car. Run licenses, driver's license in the car. Proactivity is very important. That's how you stop crimes. I cannot tell you the number of crimes I stopped before they even happened. I.e., like, I'm pulling the car over and guess what? I'm running it and I find out that the driver matches the person who owns the car, and guess what? There's a no contact order. And the woman I see from the mirror looks like the person the no contact order is against. So I pull him over and arrest him right away, and there's the victim, and she goes off to, she goes off to do her thing. But that's protecting the victim, okay? So what we do in law enforcement is we're sometimes the backside of what the courts do, i.e. we react to what is being given to us, and sometimes we're the front side because we're being proactive and we see a crime occurring. But I can't make a suspect wear an anklet or keep them in jail or prison any longer.
Hey, real quick, just before we and forgive me, I want to understand. You mentioned something about lateral, internal to the county. So if you get an officer that has been let go in South Pittsburgh and they apply for a job at the sheriff's department, in other words, or another city where we just seem to keep rotating the officers around.
Really?
Well, I guess my question to you is it sounds like you'll be very involved with each chief of the cities.
Oh, absolutely, you have to be. You absolutely have to be.
So you'll probably have an understanding of, well, this officer was released for cause, and we don't need to hire him into the sheriff's department.
Right. I'm assuming, I don't know for a fact, but like this is an at-will employment state? Mm-hmm. Okay. There should be a write-up, an evaluation done on, I don't know if there's, some agencies don't do this, but there should always be some kind of quarterly counseling, quarterly evaluation, biannual evaluation, whatever. And if an officer is doing something that is not okay, then there should be a write-up. And then it goes into their file, and so many write-ups, you're out. Or unless it's so egregious. If it's so egregious, then maybe you're violating the law and maybe you get arrested, But the bottom line is, if there is an officer that laterals from anywhere, not just one of these towns, anywhere, they can come from Chattanooga, they can come from California, it doesn't matter. There needs to be a background check done, okay, first of all. Contacting former agency and that's part of the background check, find out why is this person Why were they let go, if you know that information? And then make a determination on that. It could be that it was just a personality issue between the sergeant and the officer, and they're just like, screw it, I'm out. You know?
Well, I've heard that sometimes what happens here is that maybe someone that was in law enforcement did something 15 years ago, and then the background, you know, the information gets scrubbed, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's no information there. So obviously, in this day and age, the digital age we're in today, it's going to be a lot harder to do favors to help fellow officers out.
Well, you wouldn't know if information is scrubbed, you wouldn't know. So you're just going to take it on good faith.
Let's do this, because your wife's home alone, my wife's home. What would you like to close with? And if there's anything else you'd like to bring up before your closing, now's the time to do it.
Okay. I'd like to say that there was an individual, he said, this is a while ago, and I can't find the comment, otherwise I would make a reply. But he said, you shouldn't throw shade on another person. And you have to understand something. It's not, if you're not naming the person, it's not throwing shade. When you're in a profession that literally is a life or death kind of profession, okay, it's imperative that you're critical of each other, okay? And when you see something that's not safe, okay, and can be done differently, then it needs to be pointed out, okay? Like I said, later on, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to add some information in there for you to look at, but I'm going to use 2 examples. Number 1 was, I know officers are human beings, they can get complacent. Okay, absolutely, we're all human beings. We can be complacent, okay? And I don't remember what year it was the mid-2000s. Lakewood Police in Lakewood, Washington, okay? 4 officers would go to the same Starbucks every morning that they had shift. They would sit at the same table and a regular square table, and they would have their computers with them, and they would be doing reports. A black man comes in, well, actually race doesn't matter, this crazy guy does come in, and he literally caps all 4 of them, okay? As they sat there drinking their coffee.
When you say tap, meaning?
No, cap. Shot him, executed him, okay? One officer was able to kind of survive long enough to take shots on the suspect who was running out the door, okay? They later get the individual, and he kills himself. That incident changed how my old state conducts training, okay? On how situational awareness became tantamount, okay? Another one. So I wasn't on that night. We had a guy with a gun, it's a domestic violence thing, in an apartment complex. And it's a typical apartment complex, rows in a parking lot with cars, okay? And this guy, a bunch of cops show up, and this guy comes running out, and they confront him, and they end up having to shoot him. And as he's going down, it's close distance, like from me to you, okay? There's rifles and a shotgun. All rounds were missed except for the shotgun, and we're this close. And the reason why they were missed is because of the offset of your front sight post. If I'm this close, I have to actually raise my gun up a little bit to actually hit you, okay? So they were hitting asphalt, and the suspect had a whole bunch of rocks and debris in his skin, but it was the shotgun that took him out, okay? That incident allowed me to do what I wanted to do with our rifle training, okay, and drill into these people some concepts to where they understood it forever. And 2 weeks later, we had a clerk killed, high-speed chase, a guy with a .308 rifle, semi-auto, and he gets pitted into a ditch, but he's firing out of the driver's door, and he's pinning down another officer who's shooting, right, but one of my rifle operators comes up on the side and just does exactly what he's trained to do and takes the guy out immediately, okay? Critical of what we do, after actions of what happens in law enforcement in general is extremely important, okay? We have to be able to point out errors because those errors help us improve, okay? And that's what I'm going to bring to this department is I have a lot of experience, and I'm not tooting my horn, I swear to you I'm not, okay? But I have a lot of experience that I can bring to this department, train the officers in, expand on that training, and then the person who comes to replace me, okay, which is going to happen, all right, they're stepping into a department that is better trained, better equipped, and they have an example to follow.
Real quick, how many candidates for sheriff are there right now?
I have no idea. Everybody and their mom.
Okay, well, mom.
Yeah.
And everybody.
Yeah. I don't know.
I can kind of see with what you put out tonight why some of them would be intimidated to come on this show. I can definitely understand. But I hope that we can get the other candidates to come out here because this has been very informative for me, myself. So please, the other sheriff candidates, we'd love to have you on the show. I know Mr. Burnette would to even have a round table so we can discuss these type of ideas that makes Marion County a safer town or safer county. It would be fantastic for us to have that. But thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank all the people that listened to us and asked questions. It was a wonderful interview. Thank you. And we'll be back next Tuesday with some more interviews. Thank you.
Excellent.